Welcome to another episode of Culture of Value. I am your host, Troy Shear, with Binary Automotive Solutions and Binary Marketing Solutions. And today we have back, I don't want to offend anybody by saying a favorite of mine, but a favorite of mine, Tom Kline, with a Better Vantage Point. Tom and I, we've gotten to know each other now since we did our first podcast earlier this year, and I've really been able to have a chance to see some of his presentations and things at the digital dealer events, and just really have had a chance to sit down and really spend some time getting to know Tom and what he does. And as I was thinking, the more I learned about it, I was like, we didn't get nearly enough in the first podcast that we did to really cover what Tom's doing. And I think everyone should find, I say will find, but definitely should find what Tom is going to talk about in terms of what he does with a dealership and how he helps dealerships keep problems small and not exploding into major catastrophes, and how to make sure that the money they bring in is money that stays in and isn't being paid out to, for lawsuits and government problems and all the things that really create a lot of headaches for a dealership. So there's some really key things that I've learned, and so we'll kind of talk about a little bit. And Tom, I'm ready to go. You ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right.
Great to be back, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, it's been a pleasure of mine, and really learning a lot about what's going on, and so many little things and little details that can cause problems in a dealership that maybe, when you're busy living a day-to-day thing from a GM standpoint or whatever, or a dealer principal standpoint, that you're not necessarily looking at all those things, that you kind of put them away as, okay, well, we need to revisit this every 6 months or every year or whatever. But there are a lot of little things, and we'll kind of start off with the always do better. Always do better, Better Vantage Point. There's a key word in here that is so better is what Tom is trying to help you be.
That's it.
But
as a client of mine says, there is no best, only better.
And Tom tries to get you there on a daily basis.
There
Keep
you
doing
go.
things and seeing and thinking. So always do better. What is that exactly? I mean, I know it, but I will let you share in terms of some of the little things that can be problems from a social media standpoint, not only publicly, but on things from customers and employees that can really create issues. So I'll let you kind of dive into that, and I'll just throw some questions in along as they come.
Sure. Thanks. So as you said, what my job is to make sure that problems stay small problems and they don't get bigger. And one of the tools that I have to do that is called alwaysdobetter.com. And what alwaysdobetter.com is, it's like a digital comment box. And the benefit of it is we post signs in dealerships like this, the one right behind me over my shoulder. And it says to our guests and associates. So what we're trying to do is to capture feedback from both employees and from consumers about their experience, so that they will feel that they've been heard by management, and that'll be a deterrent from having them post online, which is trying to keep the problem internal. And then the email comes to me and I forward it to the dealer principal or whoever he tells me. And so the sign says, "We appreciate you and hope you enjoy your time and experience at ABC Auto Group. We always encourage your feedback directly to our management on any topic. We understand sometimes when you have suggestions or ideas, you may be more comfortable sharing your feelings anonymously to a third party. We invite you to go to alwaysdobetter.com and submit your thoughts and feelings there. We are interested and we are listening." So we're trying to create a culture, keyword, we're trying to create a culture of open communication and say, hey, please come to management if you have a problem. But if you're not comfortable, because there's some problems that employees or customers are not comfortable going to management with, that at least we can capture the feedback, and then someone can call the customer on the phone and get or bring the employee into an office and try to get whatever their situation is straight, so that It doesn't go on Glassdoor, so that it doesn't go on Google and Yelp and Yahoo and, Dealer Rater and Pissed Consumer and all these
yousuck.com.
there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And so by capturing that feedback, you can handle the problem and move on and not have to respond to it online and go through that whole thing. So we're trying to, again, keep the problem smaller and contained, and by encouraging the feedback, and that's how it works.
And this is something that I thought about earlier, again, before really sitting down and talking with you and getting to understand all of the things and how this works. It's like, well, so what? So somebody's pissed off and they send a bad review out, big deal, or, employee or whatever. I think what a lot of dealership leadership may not understand is those little things can really snowball into a lot more than just somebody that's upset and venting. I mean, obviously nowadays we're all looking at reviews and seeing what's going on before we buy, or before we, as we're looking for a new job or anything like that. So those are important things in terms of, hey, if you've got a brand message and a brand, your whatever your brand core values are and those kind of things, if all of a sudden people see you not living up to that in a public forum, that can really cause problems. But also, I mean, those things can then, oh, hey, God, I saw this too. I dealt, somebody else might see it who just didn't say anything about it in the first place. And now all of a sudden you've got multiple people hopping on the bandwagon that can all of a sudden then turn into lawsuits or people complaining to certain governmental entities in the state.
Right.
And now what you just thought was, oh, well, just somebody that's disgruntled and kind of don't worry about them, has now all of a sudden bloomed into not just that person being unhappy and a few people seeing it, but now you've got government issues that you're going to have to, and that's not cheap.
No, and Troy, the important thing here is it all starts, regulatory problems almost 100% of the time start with an upset customer, because the upset customer goes to the regulator. Otherwise, you're not on their radar. So if you're not handling those customer problems, and listen, a lot of dealers think they are, and I'll give you an example. One of the things a lot of dealers do is they see their online reviews. They have a clerk who looks at the online reviews every day, and they'll post something like this: "We're so sorry we didn't live up to your expectations at ABC Chevrolet. Please call us if we can be of further help to you." Well, that shows insensitivity because you're not addressing the issue. It's people who are going to buy cars are reading that and saying, these people really don't care about their
customers. It's just that canned response that, okay, here's the 3 things that you write if it's this, and here, and I've seen that before, like you said. Then all of a sudden it's like you're going, well, you said that to the other person, so it's like all of a sudden it looks like you said, like you don't give a crap.
Right. And so the only way to handle customer problems on the internet, or customer problems in general, is everyone has to be satisfied, and you have to have somebody empowered at the dealership to pick up the phone as soon as you see that review. Somebody should review all these. There's like 7 or 8 sites I advocate that everyone look at daily. And if anybody wants to reach out to me through LinkedIn or whatever, I'll be glad to send them that list, no charge. But on a daily basis, you look at those 7. And then if there is a bad review, someone should be triaging the review, figure out who it may say, surfer dude 123, but he's the only guy who was in there the day before trading in a Camaro. So it's not hard to figure out who this guy is. All you have to do is call your sales manager on the phone and say, hey, was there a surfer guy in there yesterday trading in his Camaro? He's upset.
And you made a really good point there too on that, is because if you check it every day, then it's not going to be like, okay, this happened 6 weeks ago, and now you're trying to go back and figure out, okay, well, who was that? It's like if you're doing it on a daily basis, all of that is fresh in your mind and you know what's going on, so that you can respond to it in a better way too.
And somebody needs to get the customer in, physically have them come in and get them satisfied. Now, I hear dealers all the time say, yeah, but we did nothing wrong. They lied on their credit app. All these things in the paradigm is we did nothing wrong, so I'm not doing anything with that customer. And I would advocate that that's not the right attitude to have here. If you bring the customer in, sit them down, explain to them again why they didn't get approved, right? Some people, when they hear they're not approved, of course, they're going to get emotional. And what happens when people get emotional, Troy? Are they listening? They're not listening, right?
No.
It just stops. So the communication stops once they get upset. So whatever it is, whether it was valid or not, that somebody told them why they didn't get financed, they didn't hear it. But if you bring them back in, sit them down, explain it to them, maybe you can rehash the deal in a different way. Maybe you could get a co-buyer. Maybe you can get more cash down. Maybe, there's a lot of things you can do. But in any event, maybe all you do is bring them in and show them some love and give them a $25 gift certificate to go have lunch out on you. And it might be that simple, but somebody has to call in to do that.
But I think the key that you brought up there is when you bring them in like that, is to treat them with some, hey, we get it, and really work with them and help them understand and communicate, and sit back and listen to them. Let them, and I think that's one of the keys too, is to make sure you listen to everything they have to say before you start jumping in and doing things, because if you can find out what the real underlying problem is, you can address that a lot better. And, you may have, like you said, add value to what's going on. If you can say, hey, can you come up with an extra, $2,000 down, then we could do this. And you won't have as much from a credit standpoint that you have to have. What are those ideas that you can come up with that add value to what you've done now, other than just being an order taker, where they go, oh, well, I didn't know I could do this or that. Nobody told me. And it's like, now all of a sudden you've developed a relationship with somebody, and you're looking they're looking at you now as an asset to help them, as a friend, as a partner.
Right.
And you may get that car deal taken care of now that somebody was pissed off about before. And now all of a sudden, instead of not only getting that car deal, they're going to go back and go, well, they helped me do this and this. And, so it's
Right.
like just being willing to sit down and listen.
And I think I advocate this and have taught this at, I think it was the last, not the Las Vegas digital deal or the Tampa one, but the value of the blank legal pad. I don't know if you've ever had anybody sit down when you were upset, whether it was a business or a spouse or somebody, and say, now tell me what happened. I want to take some notes. And so the tool that I give to people and say, the best way to do this is say, listen, I want to just listen. I'm going to interrupt because I'll probably have some questions, but I just want to take notes. And then at the end, I'm going to go back and read them to you and see if I left anything out. And by that process, and you show them, it's like, I took 9 pages of notes. So, and you go through, and then you repeat back to them everything they said. And then you say, did I miss anything? And they'll say, yes, you forgot this or that. And you write that down too. By that process, they relax. All of a sudden, they were forward and they were in your face, and they were telling you, my favorite 2 words in the English language is you people. You people, right? When somebody you peoples you, right? They're obviously upset. So by virtue of you listening to them, everything will change. Their tone will change, and they'll feel empowered. They'll feel better. And you may be able to, at that point, now that you understand what's going on, you say, now let's talk about how we can fix this. Here are the solutions. And I always like to give options, even if they don't like either of the options. Giving options is opens up conversation, as opposed to say, here's the one thing I can do for you. That doesn't feel good to somebody, right? When somebody says, because
again, you're having it shoved down your throat versus saying, it's kind of like the whole thing. Do you want to be sold or do you want to buy?
right?
It's like, if I'm the one making the decision, you're just giving me the, varying options, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not being forced into any type of, I get to make my own decision.
Right. I mean, one of the things, like at a restaurant, when they say, today we're out of the chicken, I was like, oh man, I was going to get the chicken. Not necessarily. Oh, I was going to get the chicken and see what the waiter says. Oh, well, we really have a nice filet, or we have a nice whatever, right? To try to see how they're trained. If they're trained to give options. but most just say, yeah, I'm sorry. We'll have to, and that's okay.
Too bad.
That's okay. But anytime somebody gives options, it's like what I checked into a Marriott. I think it was in Louisville. I was there for some conference. I don't remember what it was. I got there at midnight because my plane was late. So I got to the, have I told you this before?
I don't think I remember this one. No, sir.
Okay. So I get to the front desk. It's literally midnight and I've been traveling since like, I don't know, 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. I'm beat. And I go and say, hi, I'm checking in. And the front desk lady says, she says, what's your name? And she said, I'm sorry, sir, we've given your room away. And I said, what? You did what? She said, we gave your room away. I said, well, why do you have a credit card on file? I said, what? And she said, well, I'm sorry, you didn't check it. I said, my plane was late. She said the magic words, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. And so that was a teaching moment for me. And I said, ma'am, there are a lot of things you can do. Let's go through some of the things you can do. You could get me a cab to another hotel. You could make me a reservation to a hotel. You could find a crappy room here for me and tell me you'll pay for my breakfast. You could give me extra Marriott reward points. You could apologize. You could say, you look like you've had a really long day and I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But I mean, there's lots of things you could do. So don't say there's nothing you can do. There are lots of things you could do. So,
And I think, like you said, that's a great teaching point for anybody in any business. And obviously too, with when you're looking at, in an auto dealership, I mean, that the money and what the amount of money that's being exchanged and the things going on there's a lot that happens, like you said, that people get emotional with. And if you kind of just, like you said, blow them off, well, there's nothing I can do. There's very rarely, as you said, in any situation that there's truly nothing you can do.
right.
And the little things, like you said, can you imagine if she would have just even, hey, let me get you a cup of coffee. Let's sit down. Let's figure this out.
Right.
What do you, and again, what do you think would be a good option for, and ask the customer. Well,
Right.
Like you said, so you're not just giving in. It's like, let's hear what you have to say first, because you may actually have a better idea than I do that will work to solve, and if it's the customer coming up with the solution, hey, that much the better.
Right. I mean, one of the things I did when I was selling cars many years ago, if the customer said, look, we've kind of narrowed it down to this car and another car at another dealership, I'd say, let's get in this car and let's drive to the other dealership and you can compare them side by side. How's that? And they'd be like, you do that? I'm like, let's go. Right. I won some, I lost some, but the customers liked me because I was really trying to help. Now I wanted to sell a car, of course, and it was my opportunity to do a hood and trunk presentation comparing it to the other car, but trying to get the customer to be happy and to give them a choice and let them know I'm on their side. And it's the same kind of thing, right?
Well, yeah, I think what you said there too makes a good point from a dealer perspective. It's like, okay, everything you're going to win some, lose some. If you take the ones where you win and not only make that a one-time win, but now they're like, wow, can you believe that Tom over here did this? Because you're going to go talk now. It's like, well, I got to go, next time I've got to go there. So it's
Right.
like, because the ones you lose probably would never have, they were probably, price based or something like that, that's all they were focused on. You'd never get them to do that anyway. So it's like, you've got to take your wins and make them as big as possible. And I think that's the key. But we get back to all of this is, if people don't know, if dealerships don't know about it or know how to engage or start that process to really, truly engage with that unhappy customer,
Right.
they've got no way to do all this other stuff. I mean, because some of the things we're talking about here is actually what you do so you don't piss the customer off in the first place.
Right.
But it's like, but if you don't, and that's why it's so important with what you're doing is making sure that the ones that are unhappy, that you can kind of recapture them and make sure that if you at least are taking and putting in place some of the same principles now once you get them back into the office. And I think that's one of the things you said too, is don't do this over the phone unless that's absolutely what the customer wants. It's like you're much better off having face to face, sitting down there, like you said, where they can see you're taking notes and you're truly engaged with what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I have told customers all the time, sir or ma'am, I can't transact business on the telephone. I have all the tools here in my office to help you, and I want to help you. Now, if you just use simple words like "I want to help you," has anybody told you in the past 2 months, Troy, that they want to help you?
Yeah, one or two people, but not many.
Not many, right? So
And
when
how many times when they say, hey, can I help you? Nah.
yeah, no, not the automatic "can I help you," but actually somebody
No. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. It's like the ones that really truly want to do something for you, and it's like, hey, yeah, absolutely, I'm willing to listen, especially
right?
if I feel that I've been
Bring it, right?
slighted or yeah.
Yeah, help me, please. um, it's a different approach, and I think it has to be a culture shift in those dealerships where they just post something or they don't have a process for this. Class action lawsuits get started with two upset customers who are similarly situated, and there's all kinds of exposure that dealers have. And so if you have a culture that you're trying to reach out to customers, that you're trying to do the right thing, and that you're actively, asking for the problems to come in, then I think you knock down a lot of the potentiality of having regulators or lawsuits or attorneys general or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, of which just got a new director, who was confirmed this week or last week.
Hmm.
So all these regulatory agencies are interested in customer complaints.
And this is something too that I, to bring up, and I don't, because especially for people who may not know you or dig into your background, but this isn't just Tom, the consultant, saying this. They're like, oh, this might work great, buddy, but you're just a consultant. You don't know what it's like to run a car, dealership. Tom has run car dealerships for many years. So
Right.
this is coming from experience, not just as they would say, book knowledge. You've lived it.
I was an owner of a dealership for 30 years. My father was in the business. My grandfather started in the business in 1925. So I'm a third generation car guy. So it's literally in my DNA.
No, it's really interesting to me, like I said, and this is why, the times that we've had to sit down and talk off screen and just do things that I've been in this, the auto industry now with doing this for about 4 years. I've learned a lot just sitting listening to you with what you've got going on. So that's why one of the reasons I wanted to have you back is to just dig in a little bit deeper to what we did, because I think so much of what you talk about, and we'll kind of go into a few of these other things too, that it's like dealers may not even realize that problem exists, and with what some of the things that they are exposed to. And I know this is a perfect example when we were out at, sitting at Digital Dealer here a few weeks back out in Las Vegas, and sitting here at the table talking to some dealership guys. And it was amazing some of the things you were teaching. So I'll kind of let you, go into a few of those things, but, just things online that if you don't have the right asterisks in certain places and various things like that, little things that you're like, well, who cares about a stupid asterisk, could really get you in trouble.
Sure.
So,
I just had this conversation with a dealer yesterday, actually, that I was at. But so a lot of dealers don't pay attention to their websites as far as compliance. And there are problems where you have what's called rebate stacking, which is if you're showing the first time buyers rebate with a conquest rebate, right? Which those two will never work together.
mm-hmm.
If you're showing them on your website, conquest plus a first time buyer's rebate nets a price, that's deceptive because there's not a person on the planet Earth who can qualify for it. So I find that to be a problem sometimes. Now it's unintentional most of the time. But
There are a lot of things that people do unintentionally that get
yeah,
them in a hell of a lot of trouble.
exactly, exactly. But we were talking to a couple dealers from Oklahoma because I remember the
Hmm.
conversation you're talking
Hmm.
about, and I think I turned to you. You were sitting on my left, and I said, "I'll bet you $1 they haven't done this," and and I
And
didn't
you were
take your
correct.
and I didn't take your dollar,
No,
but
I didn't want to. I didn't want to bet you because I figured as much too.
but after the sale price on the website, if there's not an asterisk that refers them down to the disclaimer, then it's assumed that a processing fee, if you're able to charge one, and I think most states you can, plus the taxes, license, and other fees are assumed to be included in the sales price unless you have that asterisk. And when you think about exposure, that's huge class action exposure because think about it's every customer who buys a car from you is a potential classmate back for whatever, however long the statute of limitations is, which I don't know, I think it's 2 or 3 years. So if you sell 300 cars a month, new and used, 3,600 times 2 years is 7,200 times taxes and tags of average, I'm going to say, is 2,500 to 3 grand plus attorney's fees plus punitive damages, right? I mean, these are big numbers.
Plus the eventually that gets out in the public, and then you look like a fool too. So now you have brand deterioration from that. So it's just a
Correct, and you have to protect your brand, right? I mean, that's what you do. That's what Binary Solutions does is brand awareness. So the brand is so important. And in fact, I was talking about having the importance of having a media policy to the dealer I was with yesterday. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, what would you do if the camera crew showed up, right, and was saying, hey, you have a car that's been here for 365 days and the customer can't get their car fixed." And, I said, how would all your employees respond to that? Do they know to tell the camera crew to come see you? Or are you going to have, the guy your lot attendant who's moving a car on camera representing you? And further, one brand issue, I said, I'm going to give you a pearl of wisdom here. If they ask you for a statement, I said, I wouldn't want to give them a statement, but if they absolutely insist, don't give them that statement on your letterhead. You don't want your letterhead showing on TV because you've invested so much money in your brand. Give them a white piece of paper with the comment,
mm-hmm.
right? And we talked about the various other pieces of what a media policy should be, but basically it should be everything goes to one person and that one person can handle it. The media can be handled in certain circumstances so that you don't have a story. It's just a matter of how you handle it, and that's all very situation specific.
No, and like you said, it makes a huge difference with that the legalities and doing things properly there, so that you don't get into that problem of And again, one of the things that I remind dealerships, yeah, even if you have that dealer.com or one of those things that are hosting your site and doing those things, I don't rely on them to do your job.
They don't care about
Even
this.
yeah, because it's in now, and I don't know what from a liability standpoint. I'm betting somewhere in the agreement that you sign with that we're not responsible for your content. So if
or
something's screwed up, that's your problem.
or anything else for that matter.
Right. So we're just a place holding zeros and ones,
That's it.
that kind of thing, and we'll get it there when you give it to us, but it's not going to be anything where we're responsible for. So you can't, and this is something that we see. I mean, it's something as simple as, with our lifetime warranty stuff, we're working with the dealerships to get their, the marketing and done there, and we can't even get with that. And so just imagine, trying to do the little things of making sure that you got your asterisks in the right place and the right information and doing these things. Because remember, folks, those website providers are not going to go, hey, this is this is incorrect. You
Right.
can't do this. You're going to get in trouble. They're like,
Right.
most of them don't even know. I mean, it's like they're just there again, order takers getting their stuff and putting it up and moving on to the next thing.
That's
So
right.
you really have to, that's why in my mind it's so important to do that and to have somebody like you that can go in and look and do a quick overview and go, you know, I've picked out 15 things here that I can show you that could really potentially cause a lot of problems. And putting that time and investing up front could save you potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions, down the road.
Right. And another,
Excuse me.
another thing that I see occasionally I'll see on a website is where dealers will post payments, but not the rest of the terms. So all they see is, 236 a month, but they don't say how much down you have to put, what the APR is, and what the term is that goes with it. Right. All those, if you use any of those are called trigger terms. So if you use one of the trigger terms, you have to disclose the other terms. So that's often a mistake I see. Not as much with payments, because a lot of dealers don't want to mess with payments on their website because it gets complicated, but occasionally I'll see that one. I visited 2 dealers over the last 48 hours, and one of them had 0% for 72 written on the windshield. And I went to that particular dealer and I said, this is a trigger term, and if you're disclosing 0 for 72, you have to disclose what the payment is and what the down payment is, because it's got to be complete. And I showed him a picture because I did an audit before our meeting at 9. I walked the whole lot at 8 o'clock to get a lay of the land. And he said, gosh, when we bought the car from the other dealer, that just came with it. It was just on there from the other dealer. I said, well, all you have to do is either put something in the window that says 0 for 72, with approved credit, which is always important, but, X dollars down in whatever the payment's going to be, but it all has to be there.
No, and like you said, there's little things like that are so important. And that's one of the things that, with what we have with, and again, this is, one of those things I've learned, over the last few years, but with the lifetime warranty program that we provide for dealerships here, one of the keys is you can't, with that warranty, you can't force anybody to come back and get your oil change or do those kind of things at the dealership, because it's a violation of what's the Magnuson-Moss Act, which says you can't use a warranty to drive people back for business.
Right.
Just directly. So, and there are a lot of them out there that do that, and the ones that get around it, they do some things that are really kind of silly too, that could upset people. But that's why just little things like that are so important, that you've got to be aware of all, because just like with that, if you started doing that and you get a few customers, they're going, wait a minute, they're making me come back here and do that. Now you, like you said, you've got 5 or 10 of them. And, and again, like with our deal, it's on every car. So all of a sudden, if you're starting to do that with a bunch of people, that one little thing that you thought you might be saving some money on because you got the cheaper way of doing things or doing something wrong, now comes back and costs you a lot of money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and like I said, that's why I really, I encourage, and that's one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast more than anything. And it's, I am not taking a penny from Tom. Believe me, I'm pushing this on what I see, and just the importance from a business perspective of how important it is to get out and talk with somebody like Tom that can come in and look at what you've got going on and keep those small problems small, because you've got, as a dealership, and I'm sure you can attest to being a dealer owner, there are so many other things that you have to deal with on any given day with making sure employees are happy and all those, that you don't really have time, number one, to by yourself to look into all these things. If you don't know, don't pretend you know what you don't know what you think you don't, all of those kind of things. And God, what it can cost you in the long run. How it's one of those deals you say, how lucky do you feel? I mean, can you keep going and keep going? But all of a sudden, that one day when it all blows up in your face, it could be and everybody works hard, and it's like the money you make, you want to keep.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for dealers, Troy, to consider that risk at a dealership really is, you have to think of it in three different perspectives. Number one is dispute resolution, like we were talking about earlier with how do you handle the customers? And then if you do get a lawsuit, how do you handle that? You have a process. And the process, in my experience, isn't just you hand it to your lawyer and have him mess with it. That's not how lawsuits get resolved. We can come back to that if you want. But so I call this the three legs of the stool. One is dispute resolution. The second is compliance, and everybody I think knows what compliance is. But the third is risk transference. So what either policies and procedures or what insurance policies are available to try to transfer that risk off of the dealer and onto an insurance company, so that in the case you do have a big loss, that you can try to shift that responsibility over the insurance company. So those are really the three things that we talk about when we're talking about risk mitigation overall.
Well, and what's interesting when you talk about that, it's like we've, really just touched on dispute mediation,
Right.
and maybe just a touch on compliance of what you need to do on the web, online. And we could do a whole podcast on each one of those areas, because they are so in depth in what you have to know, that it's not something that you can just quickly throw up in a PowerPoint and go, okay, here's what you do. That, I think that's something would love to go down the road a little bit later with you on. But I would love to hear what your thoughts are when you said about, don't just hand it off to your attorney. I have thoughts in my mind, but would love to hear what, if we're on this, and I think we probably are on the same page on how you would handle something like that.
Yeah, so I've handled literally thousands, I would say, of complaints, because at the dealership, the way we were structured is everybody would just say, send it to Tom, and they'd all come my way, whether it was an upset, whatever. But as far as when you get a lawsuit, you have to triage it, first of all, to see, is it worth considering turning it over to the insurance company? How much is it for? What's the real exposure? And then, do you have coverage for it? So number one, triage it and see what you think your potential exposure is, depending on the facts, the alleged facts versus the actual facts. And then, do you get your insurance company involved? But then importantly, and what I have always done, and I advocate, and I do this for dealers if they want to hire me to do it, is I'll actually sit down with the plaintiff as soon as I get the lawsuit, and I'll say, don't want to have an argument with you. I'm sorry you're upset. Let's talk about it. Let's see what the problem is, and let's see how to fix it. And it's the same thing, and you go through the same process. But to just turn it over to a lawyer doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't matter if you're right or if you're wrong. If you go to court and you're a car dealer, it's not going to go well. I mean, I've been to the Supreme Court of Virginia before. I haven't been to the big Supremes, as they say, but I've taken case to the Supreme Court of Virginia. So, I mean, I've been deposed more times than I can tell you. I've seen it and done it and been there. The only way to get these things to get resolved, first, you're going to, in this case of a lawsuit, you've got two people to satisfy. You have to satisfy the customer, and you got to satisfy the lawyer, because the lawyer's got to get paid. And with all of the fee shifting laws, the fees get shifted over to the dealership. So if you violated various laws, then you are going to be responsible for the customer's attorney's fees. So if you think you're just getting the customer straight, you're wrong. You have to get the lawyer straight too. So,
and then you've got to pay your attorney as well. So it's like, I hope nobody hates me for this, but you don't know too many attorneys who are going, oh, it's okay. I'll take this for you for free.
Well, listen, there are a lot of great lawyers, but lawyers, and I have a lot of very close friends who are lawyers and litigators, but litigators typically are trained to do what?
Well, it's almost a fight and argue and win.
Argue, right? Mm-hmm. Litigators are trained to argue. They're not trained to resolve stuff and get it handled quickly. So,
as you said, they're litigators, not mediators.
That's it. And you're kind of, in my case, I was kind of acting as a mediator because I'm just trying to get the customer straight, and you got to get the lawyer straight with it. So whenever I got a lawsuit at the dealership, I would always pick up the phone, call the lawyer and say, hey, just got your lawsuit. Didn't know there was a problem. Give me a week. I'll call you. Let me do some research on my side, see what happened. And then let me come to your office and see if we can resolve it. And they always want to resolve it because they make, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but an attorney on contingency will make more money per hour if they resolve it sooner rather than later. So think about it this way. If they're getting 30 or 40% of a number, if by the usually, there's probably 3 or 4 hours that a lawyer has in a file when he actually sends you the lawsuit, right? He met with the customer maybe once, maybe twice. Then they drafted the lawsuit, they redrafted it, and they filed it, right? So maybe 5 hours. If you can settle the case after meeting with the lawyer and they only have 5 hours in it, they're going to make the most amount of money per hour versus dragging it out and spending years and a lot of focus, right? There's a lot of focus that's pulled because somebody senior at the dealership has to make sure this is going properly. You run the risk of deposing employees, which never goes well. They get nervous and upset, rightfully so, that they're going to get deposed, and it just doesn't go well. I was training at a dealership group up in Washington a couple of weeks ago and reading some cases to both the F&I, the sales, and the sales manager. And in one of the cases, the dealership had not responded truthfully about an appraisal. And the day of the salesman's deposition, the salesman said that he had found the real appraisal that morning but forgot to bring it to the deposition.
I'm sure that went over really well.
Well, that's why this case was published in a magazine about how much the settlement was.
I got it. I just don't remember where I put it.
You said he had it the morning of. He just forgot to bring it to the deposition. I mean, that's crazy. That's
my
just
dog.
crazy.
My dog ate it. Right? Yeah.
Of course.
Oh man. Well.
Are we in alignment on what you were thinking?
I was almost 100% of what you were saying. There were a few things that you added in there again that I wasn't necessarily thinking or aware of from the more legal perspective, but I was thinking, I bet he'll say, sit down and talk to him and try to solve the problem before it ever has to actually get to court.
Right.
So I was pretty well on there.
Good.
I wasn't so sure, on the insurance side of things that you brought in there, but the rest of it, we were spot on together. So
yeah. Now, one of the other things since we're on this topic that I advocate is on your consumer facing documents, you put something in those documents that says that as a condition before you file a lawsuit, that you agree to meet with so-and-so at the dealership. Because people look at their contracts. When does somebody look at a contract?
When there's a problem.
When there's a problem. Nobody looks at a contract till there's a problem, right? So they pick up their contract and they say, oh, if there's a problem, I'm supposed to call this guy, right? It says it right in the paperwork. And sometimes they don't go to a lawyer. Sometimes they call you, which is what you want them to do. If they're actually looking at your paperwork and they're calling you, that's a win, right? I mean, you resolved a problem before it became one. So I am very passionate and want dealers to put something like that in their paperwork so that they get a bite at the apple before the customer or the employee goes to the EEOC or to a lawyer or a regulator, because they don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to go to a lawyer. They just want their problem resolved. And the quicker the better, and that's how people think. They don't want to drag it out any more than you do.
And what's so interesting about what you said is that's such a small little thing to add that one little paragraph, a couple of sentences or whatever that can, but again, if you're not thinking about it, and that's again why you use somebody who has the knowledge and been doing it, that goes, hey, this little paragraph could save you a ton of headache
And that's
down
it.
the
You
road.
put in big type, right?
Yeah,
In the
that's what
back.
I'm saying. It doesn't have to be, minute. It's make it there so it's easy to see. But like you said, how many of us read through an entire agreement when we, again, you're not until after the fact, then you're going, shit, I signed that.
Yep.
So, but and like you said, but it does. It creates that extra step that somebody can solve the problem before it does become two lawyers fighting. Where you can, again, if you can humanize the issue
That's
and
it.
look at your what you can do from taking a problem and making it actually turning it into a very positive can be, it's just those ideas and having somebody that thinks about it. And that's why you put a good team. I always say you put a good team of very smart people together. Don't think you know it all. Be willing to reach out, and in the long run, it will be what you invest there will save you down the road.
Well, it's even more importantly is whoever is resolving these things will get feedback on how to make the organization better. There might be loopholes, right? There might be problems and patterns that you see over time. You say, gosh, I wonder if there's a way we can fix that so these things don't happen again. And so if you take this information and reapply it back into your organization, you will be able to make your processes better, and you'll be able to handle all these concerns better and handle customers better. So it really is illustrative if you allow yourself to do that. Now, some dealers will say, well, people just lie on their credit apps and that's what happens. Yes, some people do lie on credit applications, but not nearly as many as they think lie on credit applications.
Well, and that's a perfect. I was gonna. Well, I know you've got some things you got to do, so I don't want to take. Well, we'll kind of end with that is, But even if you do lie as the customer and come back and see if you can humanize some things a little bit and go and you get to I did
Yeah.
If you are willing to listen. It's
Yeah.
amazing what you can accomplish if you're, as you said, can I help you?
Right.
Even if now there's going to be a few that are just, there are some people you can't please no matter what you do. And those you're going to have them. I mean, there's nothing you can do but
Well,
if you're smart, and I
I
would
would say
say,
there is actually, but go ahead, finish what you're gonna say, and then
no,
I'll.
I mean, well, there are some people that it's like they just, and I think a very small percentage that are just out to cause grief for people.
Right.
But for the most part, I would say the vast majority of people, if you just will listen and work with them and try to help them solve their problem, you can eliminate all of the other craziness and legalities and stuff that you can really create a headache for you. So
The person who does this has to have some fortitude. I can tell you that my longest running meeting or customer problem, I think I stopped counting because I got upset at how many times I met. I think I met with this customer 13 or 14 times before they were tired of meeting, but I always did it with a smile and I was always ready to help. But you just keep meeting with them until you come up with a solution. It's very time consuming and it does cost money because your employees you do pay them to work. And so, it is it is expensive from that perspective, but I think it's
but not
important.
nearly as expensive as a class action lawsuit.
Exactly. Not much is.
Well, Tom, man, I appreciate it again. And like I said, I'm glad we got to do this and dig
Me
into
too.
this a little bit more. And looking forward to getting this out on the interweb and getting it out on LinkedIn. So, and I'll make sure to share some of this stuff in terms of how people can contact you. Because I truly believe it's important to make sure that dealerships are doing the things that you're recommending and talking about, to make sure all the other things we're doing for them are successful and helping them make money, and then you can help them keep it.
There you go. That's how it works. Thanks for
All
having me
right,
on the
sir.
show again, Troy. Good to see you.
I appreciate it, Tom. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.